MonkeyTalk, het creatief oplaadstation van de Zoo.
Welkom, goed dat je luistert. Dit is MonkeyTalk, de podcast over creativiteit. Wat is het precies, creativiteit? Hoe wakker je het aan en wat krijg je dan? Nou, daar gaan we het over hebben. In elke nieuwe aflevering hoor je een dijk van een vooraper, zodat je meteen lekker kan naapen. En we benoemen een olifant die jij ook zeker in je kamer hebt staan, ook al denk je liever van niet. Laten we luisteren naar Irene Koel. Wie? Irene Koel. Gepokt en gemazeld toegepast creatief, gespecialiseerd in kietelen waar je vastzit en met een bak ervaring als het erom gaat creativiteit aan te blazen in allerlei verschillende organisaties. Van de Rabobank tot de Design Academy en van Friesland Campina tot het Rode Kruis. En goed luisteren, want je weet, van creativiteit komt groei. Veel plezier!
Al een tijdje geleden had ik het voorrecht om de artistiek directeur van het IDFA, Orwa Nyrabia, te spreken voor MonkeyTalk. Best een uitdaging, want qua interviewer ben ik natuurlijk nog vlieguren aan het maken. Laat staan in het Engels. En het is al lastig naar jezelf te luisteren. En dan in het Engels wilde ik jullie eigenlijk niet aandoen. Maar toen hoorde ik Rutte over de South of Holland en dacht, nou, dat kan ook. Dus dan kan dit ook. En ik wil jullie toch dit gesprek niet onthouden. Jullie vergeven me vast mijn Engels. En niet altijd dat even alertheid hebben als je in het Engels ook moet luisteren en processen. Om maar meteen in het Engels te beginnen. Het is wel belangrijk om Orwa even bij jullie te introduceren. Want door die context krijgen zijn woorden over creativiteit ook veel meer kracht. Hij praat daar trouwens zelf niet graag over, maar zijn Wikipedia vertelt het hele verhaal. Geboren in Syrië, in Homs, studeerde aan de Higher Institute of Dramatic Arts in Damascus en daarna filmwetenschappen aan de Sorbonne. Begonnen als acteur dus, maar snel ook oprichter van een eigen film- en productiemaatschappij en distributiebedrijf. En een van de oprichters van Docsbox, het documentaire festival in Syrië. De 5e editie van dat festival in maart 2012 werd afgezegd uit protest tegen het hardhandig optreden van de Syrische regering tegen demonstranten, zo aan het begin van de Syrische burgeroorlog. Het festival werd niet langer gehouden en Orwa pleitte ervoor dat de Syrische documentaires zouden worden vertoond op festivals over de hele wereld. En dat werd Docsbox Global Day. Nou, het doel was te laten zien natuurlijk hoe armoede en onderdrukking en isolering niet voorkomen dat mensen spectaculair, moedig, koppig en waardig zijn. Hij is een van de naamloze mensen achter de Syrische revolutionaire grassrootsbeweging, die zich in Syrië inzet voor steun aan activisten en humanitaire steun aan ontheemde burgers. En daar zijn er nogal wat van. Orwa wordt geprezen voor zijn rol in dit humanitaire werk. En vooral ook voor de bewoners van Homs. Hij was ook de producent van die schitterende prijswinnende documentaire Return to Homs. Hij werd in augustus 2012 door de Syrische autoriteiten gearresteerd. En ook op 12 september gelukkig ook weer vrijgelaten. Na een campagne van filmmakers all over the world. Waar duizenden kopstukken uit de hele internationale wereld zijn vrijheid eisten in de media. Van de Robert De Niro's tot aan de Robert Redfords en de Juliette Binoche van deze wereld. En dat heeft geholpen, gelukkig. En daarna is hij via Egypte naar Berlijn gevlucht. Heeft daar verschillende prachtige documentaires gemaakt. Pikte zijn werk weer helemaal op. En zat toen ook al in de jury van het IDFA. En sinds 2018 dus artistiek directeur. Dus hij heeft nogal een levensverhaal. En vanuit die context praat hij over creativiteit. Ik vind het een eer dat hij er is.
Dames en heren, vooraper aan de foon.
Thank you, Orwa, for talking to me in this podcast.
Great pleasure. It's a great pleasure. Thank you for having me. I'm happy to see you and to have a chat. Yeah.
To have a chat about creativity. Do you consider yourself as a creative?
Yeah, I think I would dare say so. I think I am. It's at least how I approach my work in different capacities. I wouldn't say I'm an artist, but I'm certainly working in the field of creativity, yes.
And is it also an attitude as a person? Like a creative person is a certain kind of person in his life? Or is it just for your job?
No, I think it is impossible to separate the elements. Yeah. I'm certainly a believer in the importance of creativity, but then creativity in this sense is a whole process of how one processes the world, and the process of coming up with ideas or suggestions or visions is something that I think is defining of the person rather than a technique. And I am extremely critical of the continuous attempts that one sees in the world of trying to industrialize creativity in the sense of having a handbook or a manual as to how you become creative and how you can treat a subject or a challenge creatively, because I do believe it is a defining part of nature, how you see the world, not how you see the challenge.
But everybody is creative? Everybody's born a creative? Or has it in his character maybe and has to nurture it?
To me, this is in the realm of poetry, not science, because I don't know the science of this issue or this matter. I do tend to believe, yes, we're all born creative, and then there is a context, there's a paradigm, there is the world we live in that tries very hardly to oppress this creativity, to put us into the right boxes and to turn us into productive parts of a machine. And I think through that, we repress our creativity, and we systemically are expected and pushed to fall in line to do our part of the production cycle. And through that, we forget, yes, we start to find creativity to be associated with craziness even, or with different ways of being abnormal, an outsider, not part of the same machine. And I think this is, I think many thinkers describe this as part of the contemporary world that was initiated even since the Industrial Revolution. So where gradually humans are expected to do their part of the national production cycle and so on. So yes, I do hope I'm not wrong that we're all born creative, and that sometimes it just takes what seems to be a revolution or a personal revolution, breaking out from the boxes that we are expected to fit in, to actually release this creative power in us.
Yeah. When you are nurturing your creativity and you're not pushed out of your creativity, that asks for really a stamina and courage. And how did it work for you?
I think it was the only way I could survive. But that is a very special life story, because I was born in a country with dictatorship. I was born in a family of dissidents to this dictatorship. So I had a very special context growing up, where I was anyway outside of the boxes, whereas anyway an outsider who's not welcome into the usual machine. So that is a bit of a different thing. But I think that without creativity, as someone who receives it, as someone who reads literature and enjoys art and watches films, and also as someone who's trying to think creatively about the world around me, I think without this, I couldn't have ever survived this. It would have been much more brutal. And this is also a question of the connection between creativity and imagination. Because when you experience a reality that is extremely harsh, you need imagination. You fantasy becomes part of reality.
Yeah, to escape and to fantasize, and also to give strength for a better world.
Yeah, so, to have a full experience if the world, the directly real world around you does not open windows of opportunity and experience, then the experience also becomes, it is still necessary, so it becomes fantastic.
Yeah. So you became a creative person and immediately into film? Was film your way of expressing that creativity? Or is it in everything what you do? Also in cooking or in building relationships?
I'm very, very bad with rules and regulations. I'm extremely terrible with memorizing steps and processes, which is a problem in many, many aspects of my life. Generally, I think the thing that I fear the most in the world would be a shelf of folders. That's what scares me the most in this world, so much more than coronavirus. When I see a wall, and when I go to my tax advisor, for example, and I see big walls of folders, I feel like I'm an insurgent behind enemy lines. You know, like I'm there, and I can't. It's also part of when we describe this, at least from my viewpoint. But when we describe this creative take on life, it comes with taxes. I cannot handle the memorizing, for example. I can every time I need to rediscover the process new. I cannot rely on trusted ready-made formulas, because I think trusted ready-made formulas always result in consistency, but consistency is one of the enemies of creativity also.
But then you have to be really self-confident that that's an important thing. And also then, because you just have to be and see what happens. Also, when I remember the talk that you had with the director of Nocturne, remember, Gianfranco? He was telling about his making process, and that he was just, he didn't know what happened, that he was just improvising and sitting there and then see what happens and be open to see what happens and then following your instinct, that it's almost like a jazz musician.
So I think this is a key point here, that confidence, yes, but it is also full of lack of confidence, because every creative person, I mean, the greatest artists I got to work with are continuously doubting if they are good at all. And they are all the time thinking if they should not just go change their career entirely because they're not so good. And I must say that most of the artists that I have met or worked with or dealt with, who are very confident that what they do is great, actually do terrible work. So this kind of doubt, self-doubt, I think is a very organic element in the creative process. But it is actually a little more towards absurdism. What you were describing to me, it comes from absurdism. It comes from I'm not necessarily very confident. I am actually only confident that we try to order the world around us all the time, and that this actually is only a big fantasy that we try to convince ourselves to feel more comfortable, more safe. But it is actually a big collective fantasy. We cannot actually be fully safe anyway. So why take the risk of living without freedom, without imagination, if anyway it's kind of a bluff.
So it's almost a paradox. Yeah. It's a paradox. It's and being self-doubt and being vulnerable, and also being on a mission, or that you really are on a quest because you feel the urge to make or to tell the story, to tell a story, whatever story that is, you want to make something.
I think it's also very important that this is not a matter of one being full of oneself. It comes at a very high toll, and it means that one is always anxious and always feeling unstable. And there is this historically observed relationship. The more safe and stable one feels, the less the imagination is really floating free. And here, yes, the point of vulnerability comes from this angle too, that the approach towards life does not include too much safety measures. And safety measures are very, very useful, but they always come at a price. And that price limits freedom. So in a way, this is the relativity of freedom, like how you're born free, and then gradually, every time you make a decision, it limits your next options. And then you take the next decision, and your next list of options are even smaller. And then to feel free, you have to be accepted, to have a good financial stability, to have good legal stability, good social stability, and then be to protect all of this stability, you have to be really organized, calculated, and then when you do that, you do lose creativity, and you start thinking about the artist next door, like, this person is a bohemian. I cannot live like that. In a way, that person, who you might call bohemian in this case, is much less safe than you are. But in exchange for that, they win on another aspect, which is this freedom of imagination.
I always think that when people are more embracing this not being safe attitude, and embrace and nurture their creativity, the world would be a better place. But maybe that's maybe my wishful thinking.
I must say that I share this wishful thinking with you. However, I do also believe that we all need each other with all of this pluralism, like that. In a way, there is something that is complementary to each other, and this continuous tension between different ways of seeing the world and seeing human life is what makes us very strong as humans together. Still, I hope, to me, the actual dream when it comes to this would be to be able to overcome the fear factor. So it's not always a choice whether you are a creative person or a more calculated, stable person. It's not always a choice. And you cannot just simply read a book and discover that you
or switch it off and on.
But on the other hand, what matters the most is that you are not taking one of the two choices because you are afraid of the other choice. That fear is not the decisive factor here. That I am not repressing my creativity because I'm so scared of losing my stability, for example. I think there's a place in the dream. The dream place would be to be able to make this choice freely without too much fear, but rather based on real self-assessment and real balance with oneself.
Yeah. And when we would have that, then probably creativity can also help to solve problems or to inspire or to... I'm working more in innovation, so solving problems, and we need a lot of creativity with that. You work more in the documentary, but that's also very inspiring. And probably I believe that documentaries can change the world. That's why I'm a big fan of IDFA. And everybody should see that also, because those stories, those full of creative stories, really can help people to see things differently from a different perspective, and therefore also maybe face their fears or embrace their fears and become and find also that creative part in himself or herself.
I fully agree, but I also believe that there is creativity even in finance, and sometimes, of course, when we say creativity in finance, it sounds like
yeah, mafia. Yeah, no,
I don't mean it this way at all. I mean it that how do we understand it? How do we foresee? There's something about the relationship between creativity and prediction and seeing the future. I think this is what people used to see as prophecies and so on in ancient times. But there is something here that is very simple. We have we can have the power of not predicting what will happen, but of sensing the directions and sensing what's going to happen. And I think even in the most calculative fields, there is a lot of place for creativity and for philosophy, and it's for thinking about the field that I work in creatively in a way of not just being a very good operator of a software or not be just a very good at my job because I am the one who memorizes all of the regulations, for example, but to be beyond that, to be someone who can find solutions and who can devise and design different systems and different processes and can imagine what's next rather than just do very well what was yesterday, the norm.
If you use your imagination in everything you do, you keep developing, and that keeps you young. That keeps you curious. That if you start repeating yourself, then you're not developing. So I totally agree. You can be creative in every job that you have, but it asks for curiosity, and it asks for that you are open and that you're willing to see things in a new way and start over. Just like, okay, now let's look at it in a completely different way, to see if you can better it or if you can make fun also, very important, to put some humor in it, to change things. How do you do that in your daily life? You live a creative life, so that's...
I mean, everybody has their different way of approaching this. I basically trust my intuition. I trust my subconscious. I trust that my subconscious is way better than my conscious. I know that when I have an idea I cannot explain to myself, I take a little time and then think about it. And I know that when I create when I plan too much for what I need and I put all of the parameters and all of the outputs and all the objectives, and then I look at this and I get lost in it and I start finding very fabricated solutions for the problem. And then few days later, I'm less stressed about it, and then I have a very strange suggestion, and then I realize that actually this is my answer to that challenge. And in this way, the point is, to trust that we are much more rich as beings, humans, than we know, and that. If we trust our whole, our senses.
And your inner voice. Yeah. So if you have if you can listen and actually hear your inner voice, I always say sometimes when we have complex problems, we say we mustn't interfere too much with it. We just have to wait and see what happens, because as soon as you start rationalizing it and doing some sort of steps that you think, okay, then I get to the solution, but then when you leave it and then just walk in nature or do something else, then suddenly you get this inkling that you think, oh, maybe that's the solution. So that's the inner voice, that you can be attuned with your inner voice.
The other thing that this such an approach can deal with is to allow one to do more than it raises one's capacity so much, because how to put it? Part of my work is to connect too many threads for myself. Like I do so many different things, and my job is actually to make sure that these many different things are all in synergy, they're all in harmony and interconnected. And I personally do not have the capacity to rationalize the connections and the interconnections between all of these too many factors from my brain. And then I just trust that it is the same process. And when it is the same process, harmony is there inherent in all of these elements. And then I look at it and I discover, well, it works. As long as I'm not doubting it, I can make it work. It is this way. The actual delivery is much bigger than my own capacity. If I measure my capacity directly or objectively, I can't catch all of these different challenges at the same time and calculate all of their connections. So in a way, it's like a bit like the difference of computers with quantum computers now, that there is something we don't really understand, but it will do so much better than we think.
Yeah, but that's also a lot of trust and confidence that you just have to rely on it. And while looking backward, looking backward, you can always see the dots and then you think, oh, that really made sense. But you didn't interfere with it at all. It just happened.
Also accepting that nature is better than me too. And that the collective brain is better than me, because also for example, if I'm the creative director of IDFA, then this means that I'm coming up with valid ideas all the time. But if I don't work with a very good team and with a very good executive director next to me, and we're not discussing everything, this would mean that we have way too many good ideas, and we have a team who is extremely tired, and we cannot deliver on the quality of all of these ideas because it's too many.
Yeah.
So in a way, this is also part of the necessity of having different modes of operation, different processes, so that we create this balance together. And it doesn't mean that it's not always about whether this is a very good idea that could make the work better or not. It's also all of the other realistic factors. Can we actually do it?
Yeah.
Is it feasible? Is it reasonable? Is it practically doable? So this kind of grounding can only come from having different modes of operation, different ways of different approaches to life, working together. Yeah, I think that's really, in my experience, essential. You're only strong. The creativity is only useful when put in this tension. Yeah. And I think it is extremely a terrible situation that we have seen happen a lot throughout history, when one of these, now two, there must be more than just two modes of operation, but when one of these two modes of operation wins. So when, for example, when we see this, I see a lot in advertising, for example, when you see that the need for efficiency, the need for professionalizing the creative, for delivering on time great ideas, and then making all of that good with feasibility and guaranteeing the happiness of all the players. Yeah. And it's all about the after all the income and how it's balanced. And in this sense, I clearly see, continuously see, not always, but most of the time, creativity being hijacked because the other side, that is more pragmatic and administrative, is triumphant. That's why we see many of the new creative agencies now having the creative personnel being the founders. And then by being faced with this realism of being entrepreneurs themselves, you start to see some kind of balance. So I think it's essential that neither nor the creative or the pragmatic win. And this is not a conflict we need to solve. No. We don't need to solve this conflict. It is the secret of human progress, that this conflict remains and is only moderated so that it's nice and peaceful, but not solved. No side should win, and it should not be all regulated.
Oh, regulation is not your cup of tea.
In elements it is necessary, but in other elements it becomes, because I think here's the thing, and I think the industrialization and creativity at its core comes from ancient Greece onwards, and this is always about seeing one success story, going to analyze it, coming up with a list of instructions as to how can we repeat it. And then we start repeating the success that was, and it proves being successful again and then again, and then again, and it starts to fade away. And then we're always in this game of trying to reproduce, to copy a success in the past. We still follow the guidelines of Aristotle from 500 BCE now, in drama, in storytelling. And we still think we can make money out of that success that one theater play did in 2,500 years ago. And I find this to be anti-progress in many ways. So this is when I'm critical to regulations, it's not because I think there shouldn't be law or there shouldn't be a system a social contract and some kind of organizing our life together. No, it is about trying to always accept that we need to invent things from scratch every time because we learn anyway from what happened before. But this continuous tendency to reproduce the success in the past. Now you can see in film how many films are exactly the same film, more or less, with different persons in it, with different characters, different context, but it's actually the same film I have seen 70 million times already, but it still is working. Romantic comedies are a very good example of that. You already know that if you watch a romantic comedy, you will wait until the scene when the two lovers are running towards each other in slow motion. It will happen and they will cry. There is a moment in a romantic comedy when one person is going to make a small speech and then there is somehow an incidental audience that is going to applaud. It will happen in every romantic comedy film you will see. So far, it works because we add more ketchup and mayonnaise, new beautiful actors, new characters, etc. But it will soon fail, and it's already something that many people are fed up with. So This is what I mean about regulations. There is no handbook. These manuals of how to make original creative work doesn't work.
And therefore originality is there and starting over every time with a blank canvas and then waiting for the inspiration and also let it happen and not.
Yeah. And then everybody gets to come and explain it to us differently also. They can also have the right to see it in their own way, and I might not agree even. It's none of my business. Everybody should have the right to make their choices about how they process their creativity in the world around them. But again, I think the key point is the humility or the being modest and accepting that not everybody shares the same worldview or the same process, and that only by continuous negotiation between different styles we can succeed.
Well, great. It's a wrap.
That was lovely. Thank you, Irene. And always a pleasure talking to you.
Nou, dag, vooraper aan de foon.
Ik kan me voorstellen dat je deze wijze woorden van Orwa nog een paar keer wilt luisteren. Het is makkelijk praten vanuit ons vrije land, om op te roepen voor creativiteit en vrij uit te gaan, zo zie je maar. Orwa heeft aan de lijve ondervonden wat het is om in een wereld te zitten waar geen ruimte was voor creativiteit. Geboren in een dictatuur, in een familie van dissidenten. Hij zat per definitie al outside the box. Zonder creativiteit had hij niet kunnen overleven. Daar hebben we ook geen voorstellingsvermogen bij natuurlijk, hier in dat aangeharkte park Nederland. Verbeelding als overlevingstool. Door in je hoofd te kunnen verbeelden kan je ontsnappen. Ik moest ook wel grinniken om zijn aversie van structuur en regels en stap-voor-stap programma's. Creativity is not a process. Een la vol ordners is zijn grootste angst nu, kun je nagaan. En het begrijpen van de belastingregels is voor hem echt een hel. Hij haat consistentie, want dat is de vijand van creativiteit. Je wordt vrij geboren en gaandeweg drukt de maatschappelijke structuur en zoektocht naar stabiliteit en goed georganiseerd zijn, die drukt dat dan helemaal eruit. Want dat staat nu eenmaal hoog in het vaandel. Daar had hij het over. Dat hij bijna uit zo'n onstabiele situatie dan zo'n aversie tegen stabiliteit ontwikkelt. Bijzonder. We waren het er wel over eens dat creativiteit in alles kan zitten. Ook in allerlei soorten beroepen. En dat het een voorwaartse kracht is. Dat het met de toekomst te maken heeft. Het helpt je om vooruit te denken. Wat als? Ook mooi hoe hij volledig op zijn intuïtie vaart. Zijn bron van creativiteit vertrouwt hij bij al zijn handelingen. Niet alleen voor het ontwikkelen van ideeën en oplossingen dus ook. Maar ook eigenlijk zijn agenda. En hoe hij wat managt. En hoe hij al zijn werkzaamheden regelt. Want hij heeft natuurlijk heel wat op zijn bordje liggen. Die man is echt heel erg druk. En dan vraag je je soms wel eens bij dat soort mensen af, hoe doen ze dat nou? Daar gaf hij een beetje een inkijkje in. Dat je er niet rationeel over na moet gaan denken. Maar als je vanuit intuïtie werkt en volledig eigenlijk congruent met wat je vindt en wie je bent, dan komen de eindjes vanzelf bij elkaar. Dat heeft alles daarmee te maken en daardoor kan hij veel meer doen. Dat is nog wel een dikke tip. Accepteer dat je natuur beter is dan jezelf. En vervolgens ook te vertrouwen op het collectief. Als je dan tegen al die partijen waar je mee werkt ongeveer dezelfde aansturing doet, dan komt dat uiteindelijk bij elkaar. Je bent een rijker mens als je vertrouwt op je zintuigen en je innerlijke intuïtieve stem. Wijze woorden van Orwa. Dankjewel, Orwa.
Hé, kijk, een olifant. Olifanten benoemen.
Het is natuurlijk enorm pittig in deze tijd om je team te blijven inspireren en om in directies ook op een waardevolle manier belangrijke thema's te bespreken. En dat was dus ook een vraag van Sandra. Heb je nog leuke suggesties om onderwerpen als inclusiviteit, duurzaamheid, digitalisering in organisatie wezenlijk te bespreken? En dan niet weer gewoon een lezing van iemand en daar dan een beetje vanuit het hoofd over delibereren. Nou, dan heb ik hier een dikke tip. Want het IDFA heeft natuurlijk een bak aan documentaires. En wat hebben ze nou gedaan? Ze hebben per onderwerp een aantal fragmenten geselecteerd die echt heel emotioneel en heel raak zijn. Die echt raken. Fragmenten van zeg 5 minuten. En aan de hand van die fragmenten ga je dan met elkaar de dialoog aan. En wat geweldig is, doordat je eerst die fragmenten zit je al meteen een beetje in die wereld. Eigenlijk doe je wereldjumpen in zo'n sessie. Want je zit zo werkt film nou eenmaal. Je zit er meteen in. Het is wel net lang genoeg dat je er echt even helemaal induikt. En geraakt wordt. En dan kan je vanuit de geraaktheid kan je dan met elkaar het gesprek aan. Dus dat zijn sessies van een middag. 2,5 uur of zo. Dus over de thema's inclusiviteit, duurzaamheid, digitalisering en ik geloof ook vrouwelijk leiderschap hebben ze dat. Dus wil je daarover meer weten, stuur dan een e-mail naar de oppasser van de Zoo. Kijk maar even in de link van de show notes en dan kunnen we je daarbij helpen. Dikke tip voor het team. Het zit er weer op. Thanks for listening, hè? En als je nou MonkeyTalk volgt, dan kan je instellen bij de podcast-app, vaak rechtsbovenin, even aanvinken. En dan krijg je automatisch de nieuwste aflevering in je podcast-app. En zo help je bij de verspreiding van MonkeyTalk. Laat een commentaar achter, geef het door. Help even bij het verspreiden. Dankjewel daarvoor. Heb een fijne week. En in al die zwaarte die er misschien allemaal heerst, vooral speels blijven. Zoek humor bewust op. Kijk vrolijke, bijzondere films of documentaire. Van natuur tot over bijzondere snuitjes, gekke paradijsvogels. Lekker om je eigen verbeelding goed aan te jagen. Dat brengt speelsigheid en speelsigheid brengt weer lucht. En daar kan je vast wel wat van gebruiken in deze donkere maand november. Ik in ieder geval wel. Tot volgende keer. Dag, dag.
Dank voor het luisteren naar MonkeyTalk, het creatief oplaadstation van de Zoo.